Hello and welcome back to our Art Talk series with all of our artists at the Grapevine Gallery. Today is a very special day. We are joined by Grant Redden, who, before we started recording, I had to tell him how popular he's become because he's done so well with his career that to even get to his website, you got to get to page 2 on Google because he's got such a big following. He has so many fans. So before we get started, Grant, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's my pleasure, and it's an honor for me to do it. Thank you very much.
Well, for those of you who are new to Grant or his work, which that population seems to be shrinking more all the time, Grant started off as others do with other careers. But what's so amazing about how Grant's come along in his career is he's mostly self-taught with the influence and advice from some other master artists. And so he didn't follow a traditional path, and he's had nothing but success in his career. So we're going to have a little chat today, talk about his work, talk about how he got to where he is. So Grant, as we're getting started, and before Grant gets started, because I know all you all want to hear Grant talk and not me. This is a gentleman who's won awards at the Brighton Museum, the CAs. He's getting ready to go into the Prix de West this year, which sure if anyone's looked at the catalog knows that his work is award worthy in there as well. So Grant, you've come from very humble beginnings. Would you like to share a little bit of that with the audience today?
Well, sure. I grew up in Southwest Wyoming, little town, 300 population, 300. There was 35 kids in my graduating class. My family was a ranching family. My dad, when I was 12 years old, my dad bought his own sheep outfit, and before that, he was the foreman for a very large sheep outfit in Southwest Wyoming, sheep ranch. And it had like 21,000 head of sheep, and he when I was 12, he had the opportunity to get his own outfit, so he did that. He was 57 years old when most people are thinking about retiring, and he borrowed $500,000 and bought the land and the sheep. We had about 5,000 head of sheep and about 300 head of cows, and I don't know how many horses that just went along with the cow and sheep livestock. So that became our family focus, was running that sheep ranch. And it wasn't in one location. It was like we lived in Lyman. The ranch where we put up hay was like 40 miles away, and our summer range was 60 miles away, high up in the mountains or up on upper ground, which is where I live now. I was actually able to buy a little piece of that summer range, and I live on 120 acres of aspen and sagebrush in Southwest Wyoming. So yeah, my background was pounding posts in the middle of the winter, walking through sheep corrals and calving, branding, running pack strings to the mountains, taking in salt and groceries to the sheep herders. But I always had my eye on the landscape and the animals and the people, to, the romance of it all. It sunk into me, and it came out. I always had this bug to draw and paint. Like when I was a kid, my favorite part of class in elementary school was when we got to do art. And at the beginning of the summer, my mom thought, what am I going to do to keep this kid busy? So she would buy me the biggest box of crayons she could get. That you could get a 64 that had the little sharpener in the back.
Oh, those are
And
the
I'd go
best.
through. Yeah, those were the best crayons, and I'd go through those. She'd buy me a big Red Chief tablet, and I would spend my time drawing and coloring. I just like to color. But I never really learned to look at things. I just drew things out of my head. So come time to graduate school, high school, I started noticing these watercolors that people were doing, and I thought that's pretty cool. I bought myself my first set of watercolors when I was 19, and then I had to leave them for 2 years. I went on a 2-year mission to Argentina, and when I got back, I picked them up again and started messing around with watercolors. But everybody told me, now you can't make a living as an artist, and I, you know, should have believed them. But I went ahead and went to school, got a degree in economics, because I don't even know why. I guess my brother was doing agribusiness, and I didn't really have any interest in anything else. So I thought, well, I'll do that. So I got a bachelor's degree in economics, agricultural economics.
Well, and I think that's really wise because, a lot of times in primary and secondary education, there's no financial education. And I think that's a problem for a lot of people when they try to follow their passion and follow their heart, is they're not able to have that financial education like you did, so that you could come back and start with the watercolors again and follow your heart like you did.
Yeah, well, I'm not even sure that all that economics and education did me any good in terms of knowing finance, but you learn how to capitalize income and those kind of things. But artists don't have much of an income to capitalize. So, but anyway, after I graduated, I got a job doing residential and farm and ranch and commercial real estate appraisal. Just fell into that job, and so I started doing that. But all the time I'm doing my appraisal work, I'm driving down the road and I'm looking at all the color, and I'm looking at interesting design and landscapes. And then I remember one time I I did some work for FDIC, and I was up in Lander, Wyoming, and I wandered into a bookstore, doing some research on the commercial landscape there, I guess, what was going on commercially in Lander. And I wandered into a bookstore and I found a book by John F. Carlson, the famous landscape composition book that John F. Carlson did. And I spent the rest of the day sitting in a park reading that book instead of doing my real estate appraisal. So I was distracted by art, and that's kind of how that started. And then I'd go on these binges where I would do nothing but I wouldn't touch art for like 3 months, and then I would have to jump into it, and I'd do lots of it, and I'd get some framed, and I'd try to pedal them and whatever. Then I'd go back and I wouldn't touch it for a while. But so it was like this thing back in the background, always needing attention. And so about 3 years after I graduated, I'd been doing this appraisal work. I called a friend of mine who was a full-time artist. His name is Jim Norton, and he lived in Santa Clara, Utah, which was a couple hours away. Exactly 140 miles from my driveway right now, because I went to his house yesterday. But I said, Jim, on the phone, I said, Jim, I'd like to be an artist. And he kind of chuckled and he said, well, bring me some of your stuff. We'll see what you're doing. So I had some watercolors that I'd done, and I took them down to him, and he had me set him around in his living room, leaning up against his couch. And he sat there on his coffee table looking at the work like this. And he didn't say anything for almost 10 minutes, just looking at the work. And I was getting nervous. And he finally turned to me and he said, well, they're better than I thought they'd be. So that was an encouragement to me. And then he took me downstairs into his studio, and he showed me what he was working on. And he opened up my eyes to studying deceased masters. He showed me some slides that he'd taken from an exhibition of Joaquin Sorolla that he went to back in New York. And he told me, which artists to study like John Singer Sargent, Joaquin Sorolla, and some of those others, the usual suspects. And so Jim was a big influence upon my art career, my art education. He said, buy yourself a French box easel and go out and paint. And I'd done a little bit of oil painting in high school, but I had no idea, just nothing, no idea at all about how to do it. So that was where I got started. That was like in 1989, 90, somewhere around in there.
So how was that transition from water to oil for you?
Well, it was problematic. It was, watercolor is such a different medium. You handle it so much differently. And, oils was just a sticky mess compared to watercolors. And so, I kept doing watercolors, even though he told me you need to do oils, watercolor was where, was my first love. And then he said, you need to take some workshops. And so I took a workshop from Jerry Fritzler. And that same year, I took a workshop from Michael Lynch. Michael Lynch was oils and Fritzler was watercolors. Mm-hmm. And I was just blown away with what Fritzler could do with watercolor. What the rich colors that he was getting and the way he handled the medium and what he was painting on and what he was painting with. And I adopted a lot of his colors and the illustration board that he was using. And I did a lot of that. And I was taking some watercolors down to Jim, and he looked at him and he said, well, these are ready for a gallery. So I took him into a gallery in Salt Lake City, and they sold a couple, but it was kind of really slow. It wasn't like I burned down the art market right away. It was pretty slow. I was taking watercolors. Fritzler was actually, he had a gallery in his home, and he was selling some of my watercolors. And there were some things going on in oils that I said, what? I can't do this with watercolors, but I can see people doing it in oils. And so I gravitated to the oils more and more. And, they were not as strong as my watercolors for a long time. And then I remember Irene Fritzler, his wife, she said, your oils are getting much better. And, it was just, that was encouraging to me. I just kept going. Jerry introduced me to Walt Gonski, and Walt Gonski was a big influence upon me in terms of, his work ethic. My gosh, the guy turns out 100 paintings a year. And I'd go out and paint with him, and he'd paint a 30 by 30 canvas, and at the time I would do a 9 by 12. It was just, it was fun to work with Walt. But so that's kind of where I got my start. And it was like 1997. It was right in that area when my brothers, I'd been on a few painting trips. I think I went to Mexico. My first trip was to Venice. I went with Jerry Fritzler and Walt Gonski. Went to Venice, and then I went to Mexico. And my brother came to me one day and he says, I don't think you really want to be an artist. Because I was still trying to do this and appraisal work at the same time. And, I wasn't doing either very, very well. So he came to me and he said, actually, he was helping me one day. I was doing everything I could to figure out how to free up time so I could paint. I was cutting poles in the pole patch, selling teepee poles to somebody. And my brother said, I don't think you really want to be an artist. I think you just like the lifestyle. And it shocked me. And I said, well, what do you mean? And he says, well, I think you should get a line of credit, borrow against your house, $30,000 or whatever you can get out of it, and just do nothing but paint for a whole year and see what happens. And that was in 96. And so I did that. And I did quit chasing around. I just focused on painting. And in 97, I let my real estate appraisal license go. I never went back to real estate appraisal. In fact, I still have nightmares now that somebody's called me and says, you've been working on that appraisal for 2 years and you haven't got it done. I have those nightmares.
Well, tell him you're real sorry, but you'll paint him something instead, because
Yeah, exactly.
you can get him a study.
Mhm.
Well, as you were in Wyoming, like you were, and then your mission was in Argentina, do you feel like that difference of environment, that changing of light kind of helped you appreciate where you grew up? Because, the mountains are so beautiful. And, when yeah, you said you were always in love with the landscape when you're out there working really hard. Uh, but getting out of that environment and coming back, did it help you appreciate everything you'd grown up seeing more?
Yeah, I think it did, especially the cold. In Argentina, where I was, it was miserable hot. I think I lost 20 pounds in the first month.
Oh, wow.
And I was just, it did make me appreciate where I live and the beauty of this country. Now, I think looking back, I was so focused on what I was doing as a missionary that I missed a lot of the cool things about that area. There's some things that they're probably gone now, but some of the things that the old, the poor people used to do to make money, make bricks and, um, some of the primitive ways that they lived, I think now would make great paintings. Um, but yeah, it's the difference in location, the difference in temperature, difference in mosquitoes were bigger, those kind of things really makes me appreciate this country here.
So we all know that you were always, interested in drawing and coloring and things like that, but was that always your focus with art and wanting to be an artist? Or was there any time, like Carlson's painted and he's sculpted, and, was that ever anything that ever crossed your mind, or have you always just wanted to work with canvas?
I always thought it would be cool to do sculptures, but my mind doesn't work in 3D. It works better in 2D for some reason. I'm just art is sort of has to come from deep down inside of you, and if you're not, if you don't think in those terms, or you're not drawn to it, it's not something that is pulling you like a magnet, then it's probably something you shouldn't do. Something that does really interest me, and I'm trying to get more into it, is the etchings, dry points, and those kind of things. I really want to pick that up, but the busier I get, the less likely that's going to happen. It's, but I need to make time to do that. But, the two-dimensional, the drawing, the design in 2 dimensions kind of occupies my my focus. I do love beautiful sculpture, and you can learn a lot from sculpture in terms of how the light falls upon it and how it's organized, the light and dark shapes. People that do great sculptures are just like, it's alchemy to me, how they pull that off.
Mm-hmm.
From any angle that you look at that sculpture, it's a beautiful design. That takes some incredible ability.
But I certainly agree with you. And I think your appreciation for that, makes you a better painter too. Because, you don't just look at a cactus and go, hey, look, there's a green cactus. You start thinking about everything you just said about how do we get all those color values into the painting. So, well, one of my favorite things, and so one of the benefits of organizing these talks is I get to ask questions that I'm curious about, is I love how you always have motion in your paintings. And I noticed that got more prolific in about 2013 after you had gotten into the CAs. Is there a focal point or a pivot point in your career as an artist that you think you started doing that more, not just focusing on the landscape and, you had some more figurative works in there. It just always, that's what I think I love so much about your work, is it's not just a painting. It just feels like there's some motion to it, like it's telling a story.
Well, I think being in the CA's kind of made me step it up a little bit in terms of subject matter that I would use. Um, you know, I never would. I don't think I'd probably ever have done a bucking horse. If I wasn't in the CA's, maybe I would. Who knows? But for is that the kind of motion you're talking about?
Yeah, because before there would be the mountains or a stream or cottonwoods with snow on them, and there'd be a stream. But like you said, a bucking horse is in there, or it just you can just feel that motion. And I just from when you were showing at the Grapevine Gallery with us there, I remember you came by and you were in a hurry and I was running late, and they were up on the wall, and I went, whoa. And I mean, just that, and it seems like and of course in 2012, that's when I think you and Annette only had one cell phone in Oklahoma City. And I was running back and forth between the house and the gallery, like, hey, no, I won't say anything here. Just that was such a special moment too. I really
Mhm.
always look back on that with such fond memories. But just that next year it came in and it was like, whoa, you'd always been incredibly talented. That motion came in, just a whole different level of light and depth were in the paintings. And so I don't know if that was from studying or just pushing yourself with challenging yourself more, or just wondering where it came from.
It might have just been a natural progression of as I got more comfortable. Uh, I started taking on more challenging uh, material. That may have been part of it. It's probably a combination of the pressure that you put yourself in when you become a CA, or a matter of just I think I'm ready to try this kind of thing. You just get better. It was about 4 or 5 years ago that I decided that I wanted to make focusing on the human figure more of a part of my study. And because I always felt that was my weak part. And I got a hold of some guys that live in Cache Valley, which is a couple hours away. And I said, hey, I hear you guys meet once a week and you go and you paint the figure. Can I come do it? And I became friends with those guys, Mike Malm and Josh Clare and Albin Veselka, and a few others that were in that group. And so we started, that was kind of an education for me, watching those guys that were really good at the figure, painting heads and those kind of things. That was another departure point from where I had been before, I'm constantly trying to get better. Where are my weak areas? What can I do to get better? And just keep practicing.
Well, it's seems to be with everyone who's had so much success in their career, regardless of age, whether they're in their 50s or 60s or 70s or 80s. They keep saying that they're always trying to get better. They keep pushing themselves to achieve the goals within their medium. And I just think that with that being a constant across the board with so many artists, I think that's really the secret. There's no magic water. There's no hocus pocus. It's hard work, and you keep practicing and you keep pushing yourself.
That's right. Yeah. I think it's, any discipline, whether it's art or real estate or whatever it is, you know, realize that you don't know it all, and there's ways to reinvent yourself, and try to uh, learn from those who are doing it well. That's what, one of the things I love to do is study art. That's probably where I spend most of my time and money, is studying art. And I probably need I think I maybe need another hobby, but uh, you know, I just decided today, if I do get another hobby, it's probably going to be buying wagons and learning how to drive horses. So, but studying art is seeing how the most successful people in history have done this thing I'm trying to do. That has helped me a lot.
Well, you can certainly tell, because I still remember when you'd stay with us at the Grapevine, go up to the Grapevine library and you come down with a stack of books like this, go, all right, well, y'all have a good night. I'm heading out. And I was like, wow, is he really gonna look through all those tonight? Is he just trying to keep
Yeah.
the bed from like, ending up with an uneven spot in the floor or something? But but no, I know that you've studied so hard for so long, and you can really tell. Um, Two other quick questions I have, and then we can talk about what's up next for you. But one of the favorite things you taught me, and this was several years ago, is you'd been in the mountains, and I think you went on a painting trip with Walt Gonski and Jerry Fritzler, and it was one of the first times you'd painted the ocean, and you just absolutely knocked it out of the park. And I remember bugging you about it as the new kid learning the art business, and you're like, well, you're talking about the color values, but how similar they are. But do you mind sharing a little bit about how the foam of a sea wave and how snow and how they're similar, even though they're different?
Yeah, I don't remember what year it was, but I took a trip to California, and we went to Carmel and China Grove. And that was the first time I was actually able to sit down and actually I took my paints and I painted out there. And I noticed that, as the water comes in and it's all foamy and the light's hitting it almost the same way that it hits, a snowbank. The light, depending on where the light's coming from, that white foamy water I could treat it the same way I could treat snow in terms of grays and bright planes and things like that. Because the planes are the same, the light source is the same. It's so much similar. So yeah, I love painting the ocean. I love the colors. One of my favorite artists who used to paint the ocean was Emil Carlson. There's a painting in the BYU Museum of Art, and they don't have it out on display. You have to call ahead to the print study room to see this painting. But it's about a 40 by 45 painting entitled "The Misty Sea." And the whole thing, there's no land, there's no rocks, nothing in it, but sky and a horizon and a green wave. And then the foreground is all white foam. And the way Carlson handled the white foam, there's no white paint at all in it. It's all beautiful colors, little orange flicks and purple flicks and green. And there's even some spots of Indian red in there, which I don't know what that was, but that guy, that was kind of like, this is another level of study. Surfaces, the texture, the craftsmanship you can get in a painting that Carlson would get in his paintings. I remember when I first saw that painting, it was on display at that time, and I walked in, and the room was relatively dark and the light was shining on that painting. And I was like, my heart skipped a beat. And I felt like, I'm underdressed to stand in front of this painting. And I went up close to it, and to see everything that he was doing in there, it was like, this is a whole new level of work that you can aspire to. So that's been, something I've been trying to figure out. I was able to get that painting alone with my camera, and I photographed every square inch of the thing. And I look at those photos every now and then and look at that texture and that beautiful craftsmanship that Carlson did. It's like subject matter doesn't matter. It's how you paint it that was so awesome about that.
Well, hopefully you get to go visit it again soon. I think that'd be kind of a neat reunion.
Yeah, and there's I went to a show up in Billings, Montana. There was Clyde Aspavig and Emil Carlson. And I think Clyde may have actually put this show together because a lot of the paintings in there that were Carlson's belonged to Clyde. And because he's a big collector of Carlson. And it was another tour de force of craftsmanship and beauty that it was just like, that's cool. That is great painting. Those are the things I get excited about.
Well, and when you're following your heart and you're following your passion, you're doing what you're called to do, you just you do cool things like that. And you see cool pieces of art, and that becomes your everyday. So
Yeah.
that's why the trick is to figure that out. So, well, from snow and sea foam to nocturnes, you have a beautiful nocturne behind you there. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it with the audience, but kind of like with snow, while you're getting that set up, originally being from Oklahoma, our snow never really lasted more than about 36 hours, so it never refroze. I think I
Mhm.
remember talking to you one time saying, "Hey, I finally understand Grant Redden snow because we had a really bad cold, storm come in, snow, ice, everything refroze." And we finally saw the blues and the purples and everything that you'd been putting in snow. And we always loved your paintings and thought it was cool, but we never knew what that color was. We never seen it
Mm.
our whole life until it stayed under 10 degrees for about a week, and we had about 2 feet of snow. And I was like, all right, I get it now. So,
Yeah.
but conversely, I'd seen nocturnes for years at the Grapevine Gallery in Oklahoma. And it wasn't until I was up in the mountains more that I understood what the color of a nocturne really was, because there are those blues and those greens at night. And I see that this one has more of the blue in it, but I'll just kind of let you talk about that here for a couple minutes and talk about those nocturne lights and why they are like they are.
Well, nocturnes are kind of like the artist's opportunity to invent everything, because in reality, I'm not sure if it's the right when there's no light. But when you go out, it's hard to see. It's hard to see colors. I would go out walking with my kids sometimes, and one of them would have a red hoodie on, and one of them would have a dark blue hoodie, and you can feel it more than see it, the difference in those two colors. And then a lot of the nocturnes that I paint now are, the photo reference comes from a midday shot. And then if you, in fact, I've taken paintings that were what I call failed daytime paintings, and I've turned them into night scenes, nocturnes, by invention of color. And that's what's fun about nocturnes, is you get to invent, you get to really um, stop being controlled by what things ought to look like in terms of color, and you get to invent it. So that's what's fun about nocturnes for me. One of my favorite painters of nocturnes again is Carlson, and also Frank Tinney Johnson, and a living artist that does nocturnes really well is Bill Anton. Just beautiful nocturne paintings. Um, the nocturne is, if you haven't been out on location or you haven't had experiences in the dark, you may not appreciate a nocturne as much as if you have been out and you feel that mystery that nighttime brings. And you've been out in the moonlight, been in a canyon in the moonlight, and see how much atmosphere there is between you and the canyon wall. In how in the world you can see that in the dark is amazing. It's, you more feel it than see it. Jason Rich and I took a trip down to central Utah, and there's a canyon down there that hardly anybody knows about. It's just this great canyon. And we went down in there, and it was a full moon, and we just spent the whole time just ooh and on at all the shapes and colors, not colors, but all the value differences that you could see in the moonlight. One time when I was a kid, my dad and I had to go move a herd of sheep. We were leaving this one high mountain pasture, and we were taking the camp and moving to a lower area. And it was in September. It was still fairly warm, but there was a overcast. There was no moon, there was no light. And my dad said, "Okay, you take this horse, and you ride this one, you lead this one, and go down this road." And I couldn't even see the road, and these are horses I did not know, so I was a little nervous about, and I had no saddle. It's just, you just jump up bareback and you ride this horse and lead another one. And it became a very cool adventure to me because I didn't know, if I was going to stay on the road or not. And it was just a nervous time, but it was just this cool feeling, feeling the muscles of the horse against your legs, and, just hoping that this horse can see better than you, because, that was a night, that was an experience in the dark that colored my appreciation for night scenes. Another time I was, this was more recently, I was coming up a road right close to where I live, and the moon was out, and there was this huge dark shape on the road. And I obviously I had my headlights on, and this big old dark team horse, a draft horse, was out in the middle of the road. And I pulled up, and there was a few others with him, and I thought somebody's going to hit these guys. And so I thought, I've got to get them back. I know where they belonged because there was a gate open I saw that they'd come out of, and they weren't mine, they were the neighbors. And I thought, you know what, I better get these guys in. So I turned off my vehicle, got out, and I walked up to this guy, and he was like just this monolithic shape against a dark shape against the night sky. And the night sky was dark, but there's so much light just in the stars and everything. And, he just loomed up there. He had a big old blaze, and I'm looking at this guy. I could have walked underneath him. I thought, this guy is huge, but I was able to get him back inside, off the road. And it's hard to explain just the mystery that night brings to typical landscape and typical figures. That, whenever I'm painting a landscape, I'm thinking of those experiences. If you ever get a chance, go lay out on a haystack at night and watch a meteor shower, or get out in the desert, like on the Little Sandy over toward Farson at night, and look how the moonlight changes the landscape as clouds roll by. Those are experiences that color my efforts as I do landscapes. Get out and experience it.
Well, and I think that's such a great point, because like you were just saying, I think you're bringing your other senses into it instead of just your vision and your eyes. It's the feel, all those past experiences really help you, with that experiment of a nocturne, to bring it to life on the canvas. And I think that's a great perspective.
Yeah. And you could do the same thing with a day scene. If you've ever enjoyed the smell of sage on say a June morning, and you got to go ride through a herd of cows and check for calves. If you've ever enjoyed that wonderful feeling of being horseback, and the sun on your shoulders, and the sun on the gravel, and smell, you just pay attention to that kind of stuff, and then hopefully you'll be able to translate that when you do a painting.
Well, that's great advice. Well, my final question, you've kind of almost hit the perfect setup for it, is with the CAs and the trail rides. You've had experience riding your whole life and being outdoors at night and things like that. What's it like on the trail rides for just the average art enthusiast who buys art, collects art, and appreciates looking at it, versus, the CAs when you guys go on the trail rides? What are some fun parts that you can share with the audience so that they can say, oh yeah, they do this on the trail rides that they normally, I know there's some stuff needs to stay private, but just some kind of cool, fun facts about the trail rides that you think people would enjoy knowing.
Well, it's like we go to a ranch. It's usually like the last one was the 4-6s ranch in Guthrie, Texas. And they had been in a drought, and they said, we hope you bring the rain. And yes, we brought the rain, and it rained the whole time we were there. And one afternoon, evening, just before the sun went down, there was a storm coming in, and it got 70-mile-an-hour winds. and we're all just standing there trying to hold down one of the tents that we were all standing in. And after the wind finally died down, I looked out there and my teepee tent was upside down in this puddle that was about 4 inches deep. Everything was wet. I slept that night in the Suburban. But the trail rides are a lot of fun. You get to ride weird, strange horses and see some new country and spend time with your CA brethren. I get to visit with them in a not an art show environment, and so it's more relaxed. We have a lot of fun around the campfires, talking, telling jokes. We talk about some of the things that are exciting to us, and you get to know people that way. So those are great experiences. This past one, we had a doc come out from, he's a pulmonary specialist who was Red Stiegel's doctor, and he came to our trail ride. Seems like we always have to have a doctor there, especially as men get older. You have to have a doc. But anyway, he came and he brought his 2 horses. They were Tennessee Walkers, and for some reason he took pity on me and he says, "Hey, you want to go for a ride?" And it was like the day before all that storminess. And yeah, I said, we went off this hill and down into the rough country. We rode for maybe about an hour and a half, and that was the only riding that happened on the trail ride this year because of the weather and the mud and the slippery conditions. But you're riding strange horses. Some of them are good, some of them are not comfortable. Sometimes some of those guys, that's the only horse they've been on in a year. And that's happening with me now because I got rid of all my livestock except for chickens, to handle things here at home. But it's great to get horseback.
Well, you can just see so many parts of certain country that you just can't see from the road, and
That's true.
or a hiking trail. And so the horses, you just get an incredible perspective on seeing things so much differently. So
yeah, much slower, at a horse's pace rather than 70 miles an hour going down the highway.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, you've got the Prix de West coming up, which is when we're going to air this show as that show opens. What else is on the horizon for Grant Redden in your career?
Well, let's see. Prix de West, I'm really nervous about that because this is my first time. Hopefully my work will be semi well received so they don't kick me out. I'm pretty nervous about that, but I've been really busy up until this time. It seems like, I had the booth exhibit and I had some group shows at galleries, and the CA constantly, you're constantly trying to get your stuff for the CA. As soon as it's over, you got to get back at it. That's 7 pieces. And I've taken on a couple of commissions for the LDS church that has been really time consuming. They, some huge paintings for those guys. And so that's been kind of a new direction that I've been working. I don't know. I just keep my nose to the grindstone, try to get better at what I'm doing. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, what can I do better? What should I be doing? One of the things I need to do is get some more photo reference for some of the things that I'm thinking about. So I'm starting to make a list of some of the things that I think would be neat paintings to do, over the next 2 or 3 years, and trying to line up models and those kind of things for those paintings. But I feel so fortunate to be able to do what I'm doing, and it's a partnership between the artist and the people who love art. especially those who are willing to spend their money on art, because without them, artists would be washing dishes or digging post holes someplace, you know. We have to have support, you know, and so it's their, they handle their part of the partnership and the artists handle their part of the partnership, and together they actually make an art world that stays functioning. Without one, you don't have the other. And then, you know, every artist has hopefully a supportive family. You know, my wife has been so supportive over the years. When I was trying, you know, we were struggling so much, and you know, I should have just went to got a real job as a plumber, you know, and make all kinds of money, but she made do with almost nothing and raised a pile of kids. And I asked them, you know, I apologized. You know, guys, I'm sorry that you grew up in such penury, but they said, you know, we didn't feel like we were poor. So, you know, what was cool when we were raising our kids, we homeschooled them all the time. And so I'd go out on location to do some painting, see some beautiful country and get so excited about it. I'd quit and I'd go back and get my family and bring them out. And so that was kind of the end of my painting that day. But, you know, I got to spend a lot of time with my kids.
Well, and I think, you know, I think that's so important. You know, whether it was COVID driven or what else, you know, we've drug our kids all over. And the fact that your children can talk with firsthand experience about the things that they've seen, I think you can't put that in a textbook or a classroom. You know, you can't get that, you can't get that lesson across unless you have that real life lesson. And I think
It's true.
that's important. So I think you did exactly what you should have done with that. And one last thing before we wrap up, you know, you talked about the partnership between the artists and the art enthusiasts. And you know, you're mentioning the CAs and the Prix de West and some private shows and commissions. You know, I think people do get frustrated sometimes. They're like, well, you know, I want to get one of his pieces. You know, why can't I get one of these pieces? Why is it so hard to get one of his pieces? You have all those commitments. You know, there's only 12 months in a year. And, you know, when you have to have 7 for the CA, and, you know, how many paintings, you know, you say Walt Gonski cranks out 100 a year, and that's great, but how many paintings is realistic, you know, for you to do and be satisfied with the quality of putting that piece of art up on the wall available for sale? You know, what that's the question, you know?
Yeah, that is a big question. And you know, as I've been trying to paint bigger paintings too. So, and that takes, you know, more time, more paint, more resources. You know, I think if I can get 40, if I can limit myself to 40 paintings a year or less, then I can actually spend enough time to, you know, build the texture and solve the problems that don't get solved if you're in a great big hurry. You know, even now still, you know, I send a painting out and think, oh man, why did I do it that way? You know, it's just like, oh, why did I, what was I thinking when I designed this thing? Then you fight the design, and then you never get it resolved until it's due, and then you send it off and you think, oh, just if the paintings were better, I'd feel more comfortable. It's like I sent 15 paintings down to the Booth Museum, and I'm looking at them down there. I'm thinking, oh, I wish these paintings were better. I always feel that way. You know, if I send a painting to a gallery and it doesn't sell, you know, it's my fault for not sending a painting that will sell. It's my fault that paintings aren't being picked up like crazy, you know. So
I remember Dan Gerhardt's painting a piece that we have in our collection at the house at the Grapevine, and a couple artists were out just painting and having some fun that day, and someone comes over and Dan Gerhardt said to him, "What do you think?" And said, "Oh, you know what artists say, it takes 2 artists to make a great painting, one to do it, one to tell the other guy when to quit."
yeah, yeah, that's true.
So, well, Grant, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I know you've got a very, very busy schedule, and we appreciate you taking time to talk a little art with us. And we wish you the
My
best of
pleasure.
luck at the Prix de West. And if nobody's lucky enough to get your work, we'd be more than happy to sell it for you. So, um,
Thanks, Clay.
be my pleasure.
Appreciate I appreciate your time. It's an honor for me to to do this?
Well, and I don't have the ability to do what you all do, but part of the fun of being in the art business on this side of it is you don't own the piece, but when it's in your gallery and it's available for a collector for a while, you get to enjoy it for a while, and then it goes on to its permanent home. So I guess I'm like a foster parent for art
Yeah.
until we go to its real family.
Yeah, I heard a really interesting comment at the Booth Museum. One of the other artists was Arturo Chavez, and he said basically when he gets a painting done, uh, it's no longer his painting. It doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to the public. It belongs to other people. And so a lot of times when you get to have a painting either in your gallery or in your home, it's like you are the caretaker of it at that time, and it's may not belong to you. Right now, I'm the caretaker of a great little painting by Mark Daly that hung above the lamp in Walter and Dan's house.
I know the one.
Yeah. So, I look at that thing and it's not very big. It's like 11 by 14.
Mhm.
And it's just like Mark Daly himself told Dan, I think it was, he said, I painted above my head on that one for that time. And, I think about that all the time. It's wonderful to have art. It's art on your walls is as important as table and chairs
Mhm.
in your home.
Couldn't agree more.
So,
I could not agree more.
well, thank you, Clay. I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope everyone has a good time seeing Grant's work at the Prix de West. And if you're not going to be able to make it to the Prix de West, you can see the catalog online. And hopefully we see you in the gallery soon. Thanks again, Grant.
You bet. Thank you.